right time and have the possibility of a big price move. Secondly, anytime you see a best friend signal that has a huge, big upside move, that's also, just think of the logic behind that. That they have come into that stock for some reason. And it's usually creates a major change of investor sentiment. Now, do they all go up? As we saw in Mavis today, after the big price move yesterday, it opened lower and traded lower. So there's a strategy on how to use that price pattern to get in. No, John, we can't. For some reason, we've got a problem in the screen sharing application tonight. Yep, I keep trying doing the process of stupidity, which is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Bob, no, we don't have a screen up right now because darn projectors. I don't even know how to set it. As I'm talking, I'm trying all sorts of different things to see if I can find something. That's right, insanity or stupidity. We could do that. Where does everybody have their own? I guess you could bring up your charts. So let's try that. Let's use an example. ROAD. I'll have to bring up my chart so I know what I'm describing to you. Bring up charts. Okay. All right. Can everybody bring up their charts? Is there anybody having problems following on the charts? Can you share with us the small companies associated? Yes, but that's already in the file. That file being down in the very bottom right-hand corner of this screen. Okay, so let's bring up the first chart, which would be MDIS. So you could see yesterday we had a big price move. And then today it opened much lower. That usually tells you that is not going to continue the breakout until the consolidation is over, which means now you have to sit back and wait for the next buy signal. But here is the information that is in that big candle of yesterday. Even though there was no follow through, there was now more attention brought to that that stock price. So let's go to some on the downside. ROAD. If you will look back on March, whatever that is, on March 18th, that big shooting star, the next day, or I guess it would have been a Monday, they gapped it down. When you have that powerful a move, there's going to be more follow through. But the same, yeah, Tony, there is no screen because we can't get the projector to come up. So if you bring up your own charts, we can walk through some of this somewhat carefully or effectively. So you can see on the shooting star on the 18th, followed by that gap down. Now, a lot of people say, man, I don't want to be shorting a stock that's already down 3, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30%. Well, when we know the, oh, I could even do that. There we go. I can do that. Ha! ROAD, I mean, this is just the example that when you saw that shooting star on March 18th and gap down, there's going to be follow through. Now, on 5 days ago, you had a gap down doji, dragonfly doji, followed that by that big move up. Now, this is where one of the significant factors of candlestick analysis tell us immediately what's happening in investor sentiment. The bigger the signal, the more compelling it's going to be that there's been a change of investor sentiment. So we had that one. There was, so look at, whoops, I can type in MPLN. Back about the 3rd of March, you can see the kicker signal downside. That is your best signal, individual signal telling you that's when you want to go short. The probabilities are pretty strong you're in the right direction. Now, just happenstance, you can see that there's been a inverted hammer bullish confirmation today. So it now becomes a buy again. But the big money we made just in the last few days or last couple of weeks was in Viacom, VIAC. By the browser recommended by. You can see where you on the top there you had a hanging man gap down. Now here is the prospect. When it gapped down the next day after it gapped down below the T line. Okay, yes, I'll use apps. Sorry. MPLN. Sorry. And then Viacom. And we just made huge profits on those puts. Now, here's the illustration. A hanging man gap down, I'm showing on my chart, through the T line, then another gap down. When they start gapping things down, that's telling you something. Oh, I have seal on here somewhere, I think. Oh. What's the prospect? Oh, Denoda, just a steady uptrend. Yeah. Let me illustrate the big price move setups. Let's see. back to Viacom. Yeah, what does that tell you? You'll pick on slides about uploading the slides. Oh, nah. It would take me a long time to go get all those slides. Viacom, you can see what's happened when it got down to this level. It's going sideways. That tells you probably want to move your money if you happen to have been short. It may go down lower, but not a whole significant. If you made your big money on that big down move, take that money and go on to something else. Yeah, I guess we didn't even have the password in earlier, so everything was getting goofed up. And same scenario on DISCA, kind of the same type of chart. Would you buy Viacom, Ray? No, there's no buy signal. It's made its move. And the same scenario on Discovery Inc., DISCA. If you made your money off of that one, now you don't know which way it's going, move on to something else. Move on to something that looks like that first gap down through the T-line. So if you take a look at BBL, another one that about the 1st of March did a bearish kicker signal. So this is why the candlestick charts are so much like a neon sign telling you when the reversals are occurring. The kicker signal to the downside, then you're in a downtrend. Now look where it had a strong buy signal last week with that hammer gap up through the T-line. You stay long. Notice what it did about 1st of February. Another hammer type signal gap up. Those gap ups are what create the strong potential price moves. Oh, the EHTH. You could, but notice what EHTH did from the beginning of February. I mean, it took a month for it to get out of its sideways mode. So I was pointing out BBL on the basis that the 1st of February, you had a little hammer signal gap up, big price move. Then the kicker signal, big down move. Now you've got another hammer signal gap up. It's traded sideways for the last few days, but your stochastics are still heading up. You're still trading above the T-line, and it wouldn't be unusual to see it start popping back up again. I bought BBL and put in a stop and keep getting kicked out. Yay? I guess the answer to that is, has it closed below the T-line? Harry, you should be bringing up, if you've got charts that you can look at while I'm talking. What's wrong with a 10 EMA? Nothing. If you want to use a 10 EMA, go ahead and do it. We've used the 8 exponential moving average, and it not only turned me around from being the worst investor in the world when I started using candlesticks, but then when I threw the 8 EMA on, I started making big money, or at least kept from getting whipsawed in and out. Well, yeah, the stochastics are still heading up. I've got my 12.33 stochastics at around 60, 65. And you've just had a gap up from a hammer signal above the T line, still has the prospects of more upside. And the last thing we've seen is a buy signal, and even though it's gone sideways, it hasn't closed below the T line. Using 12.33. Okay, let me, so if you look at the kicker signal on HZNP, is that, Bob, is that stochastics or is that MACD? So HZNP, the kicker signal, even though it was backing and filling today, it didn't change the trajectory of the kicker signal. If you look at Oracle, ORCL, back on February 15th, you saw the first kicker signal. Starts your uptrend. March 1st, you saw another kicker signal. Started your next uptrend. Now, I know this is, I'll be showing this a lot quicker. You can see on about March 7th or so, we've got a bearish left-right combo in the overbought area. Always keep in mind, if you're going into earnings, which apparently that was on earnings day, if they have a strong sell signal going into the afternoon on earnings, close out the position. As somebody that probably follows the company, which means the big institutions that follow a company are selling off, going into earnings, the signal will tell you to be out of it. All right, I had a bunch of stuff that I could easily have. SWAV. You could see 3 days ago it did your best friend signal. I am on Oracle and don't see that. Which one don't you see? On about March 5th, you should see a doji at the top followed by a bearish engulfing signal. None of those kickers. On February 15th, I think it's February 15th, February 19th was a dark candle at the bottom. The next day they gapped it up and went the opposite direction. They're on Oracle right now. And then there was another one on, it was on February 19th. And then the same thing happened on February or March 4th and March 5th. Another kicker signal. On earnings day, sell-offs. Does the selling start out in pre-market? We have no idea, Mike. It doesn't really matter. Pre-market doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. You've got a company that might trade, like Oracle might be trading 34 million shares on any given day, 10 million, 15 million. It might trade 20,000 after hours. So that is not the accumulation of everybody buying and selling. That's just whoever's trading it after hours. Yes, kickers are the strongest signal. They tell you there's a dramatic change of investor sentiment. They can occur anywhere. The kicker signal doesn't have any regards or any considerations as far as what the where you are with stochastics or the trend. Why do I have this one here? Oh, so there's a kicker signal on NTPN. On March 8th, the next day they gapped it up on March 9th and went the opposite direction. NPTN. What did I say that backwards? Well, for crying out loud. NPTN, sorry about that. There's your kicker signal. So the reason I'm pointing some of these strong signal and patterns out is because if you don't think you can learn or learn quickly all the signals and patterns, at least know what they look like, and then start using 3 or 4 or become expert at 3 or 4. Raymond, there's no charts tonight. Oh, yeah, and unfortunately we would usually get it cleared up, but it happens to be a Thursday night right before a 3-day weekend. Normally I could call support. Somebody would come on and help me, but they're all gone. What date on the kicker signal on N? Well, you should be able to see it clearly. On probably about March 3rd, you had a big dark candle at the bottom of the downtrend. The next day, they gapped it up and went the opposite direction. That's your kicker signal. Now, you've got a couple things built into that. Number one, the kicker signal itself. Number two, in the kicker signal is a gap up. So the gap's already in it. Oh, BZ candle power, you probably don't want to save this one. So if you ever see, and the third thing is, look at the magnitude of move from where they closed one day and closed the next day. STEM had the same type of signal, not as clean, yeah, on that about that same day. I don't have that as a doji. NPTN. I have it as more of a solid candle, a solid white candle. Are you looking at the right one on FT, on NPTN? The big dark candle at the bottom of the trend, and the next day they gap it up and they trade positive. Close at that day right on the T line. Not looking at the candle prior to that big dark candle. It could be. I'm just trying to show the examples of what starts big price moves. So look at A. Whoops. Do it. If you're looking at NPTN, the hammer meant something, but it was negated the next day with a big dark candle. It was that big dark candle followed by the gap up and going the other way, which was your reversal signal. An ACMR is another example that when you start seeing gap ups, that tells you they're trying to get into this with great enthusiasm. Yeah, yeah, it's coming from my side where for some reason I can't get into the. Okay, so unfortunately, this is just a inefficient way to describe things. Uh, and I forget. Oh, so if you look at CNTY, you can see how you had a buy signal about a week ago, a bullish, you had an inverted hammer, then a bullish candle, and then notice it went flat for 3 days, and then the pop back up. So that's what you should be kind of looking for in BBL, that same scenario setup. Yeah, gaps are an easy scanning process. Like you don't even really have to scan for them. You can most of the time do a scan that you're just looking for the biggest percent moves on any given day in stocks, and they will usually pull up the gap ups. So if you go to BOWX, here's the important factor that you want to see when a big price move occurs. Notice what happened the next day. Sold it off. And notice where they brought it back down to, right back to the 50 and started back up. Uh, Andrew, I'm typing them in. BOWX. It looks like it's optional, yes. But so here's the important thing of this chart is, well, yeah, you've got three white soldiers. Um, but the important thing was when they did a doji gap up, price move. The next day they sold it off. It didn't tell you this was out of the woods or kind of non-important anymore. It was telling you there's something big now being brought to the attention of this stock. Now you wait to see when the profit taking is over. So that is why on something like Mavis, MVIS, again, you don't write it off. Start watching to see maybe the T line's going to act as support. And if they, now you've got some very good entry points, which is if they came back up through today's open on Monday's trading, you could start buying. Or if you wanted to be more conservative, if it came back up through yesterday's close, you could be buying. Because what did that big candle of yesterday tell us? A lot of attention was now being brought back to that stop. People are watching it. And Kit, no, that's exactly what we were demonstrating. Is your stochastics came from the oversold area. They did a big move to the upside. Today there was profit taking. That big move to the upside has it's not telling you that it's over. It's just telling you got a day of profit taking. Now, at least with candlestick graphics, you can analyze where you might be getting into the stock position. And why would you be getting into the stock position? Because yesterday's candle told you there's now a lot of attention being brought to this stock. So obviously they got a contract with Microsoft. Yeah, so this is getting ready to be bought. I'm trying to think of what other ones we can do now that I don't have the graphics. WVE, whoops, put it over here, was another good example that when you see a kicker signal, as you saw on about March 15th to the downside, that's telling you they're trying to come out of this position with great enthusiasm. That's where you can start going short. Not really a scoop on QS. If you bring up your QS chart, you can see 3 days ago, you had a Harami signal. Now that doesn't tell you all that much, except it tells you to be a little bit alert, because now you add other things into your visual analysis. One, look where the bullish Harami occurred 2 days ago. Right smack dab at the same level they bottomed it out on January 29th, and on March 3rd, now they've bottomed it again. It's not a scoop pattern, but it's a trend channel. And where's your next upside potential target? Probably up in about the $65 range, with that being the top of the channel. But now you've seen what happened yesterday. They did a little doji gap up. Today they announced that they had gotten, or last night they may have announced that they met the qualifications to get another $100 million of research funding from Volkswagen. So that is one that, even though they don't have a product yet, their product that they're developing could change the whole energy industry. So you want to buy this one mostly for longer term. ASO similar. That looks more like a wave 3, Deborah. All right, I had a couple in here. Oh, FGEN, when we recommended that this morning, or for this morning, you can see what was setting this one up. And again, this is going back to what causes strong price moves. Did I type in that one? No, I didn't. Got a link one. The fact that 3 days ago you had a little inverted hammer gravestone doji. Now, whether you want to call it an inverted hammer or a gravestone doji doesn't matter. But the fact that it looks like an inverted hammer and then opened positive, remember our statistical results of an inverted hammer. That if it opens positive, you've got the probabilities 95% or greater that you're going to be in an uptrend. Now, that one occurred because of an upgrade, which doesn't have the same significance as if they had announced something that was going to change the fundamental or the investor outlook of that company. But just the fact that the upgrade created a buy signal at least allows you to go back and say, all right, why did they upgrade this? And their reason was blah, blah, blah. At least that tells you, oh, the buying's here, the signal's here. I can be buying this stock. And I think they upgraded this to have a potential of $47 as a target, which is, if you look over at the end of February, that would be the area that would fill the gap. So we always have visual elements to kind of tell us which signals are telling us we have got the strongest potential uptrend. So if you look at UTHR, notice it did a best friend signal. Now, I wouldn't have any idea what this company makes or does, but the fact that it had that price move, your best friend type signal breakout, that gives you the opportunity to go back and see what was causing that price move. And so, again, with not having the charts up, this is where I would continue to say, all right, how would you trade this? Obviously, more likely to be trading it with options, but what would be the best option strategy? And this is what we're going to go through next Saturday, of maybe you put a spread on. And we're going to go through the application or the assembling of a spread, which on most softwares now is just one click, that you can pull up the spread, see what it would cost to get in it, and click it, and that sends the buy parameters, and the traders will start working on it. We're also going to be looking at, sometimes you want to buy a bullish spread, a bullish call spread, but then there's other times that it would make more sense to sell a put spread. Now remember, selling a put spread is bullish. And so and that's simple trading. A lot of people say, oh, I'm afraid of these all these complicated trading strategies. We've got two basic trading strategies with combinations. That's buying the puts or calls outright, or buying a spread, and you could be buying a call spread or selling a put spread, or vice versa on the downside. And it's very simple. It's something that you don't want to be sitting there all day. Okay, Kathy, I take it you, YTH, approve something. All right, so that becomes significant. And that is why knowing what to look for, if you look at EYES, I mean, we made very good money on that one because in the morning, no, it was late in the day, I think, they got approved, and the stock was trading at $2.90, doing a bullish kicker signal. And so we went back using our rare process to find out why it was up like that. And the FDA approved some of their techniques, or either medicine or whatever that helps blind people see again. And so that probably would have had bullish ramifications for later on. Now, we bought it at $2.90 and it went as high as $10 that day. So it's always the rhetorical question, are we always going to be in positions where you have huge price moves like that? And the answer is definitely not. But knowing what the signals are tells us there's a good probability that we're heading in the right direction. What is usually a temporary jump? On an FDA approval? No, usually that leads to further ramifications. It might at a profit level area like we see in eyes where it's going sideways right now. But what usually happens on some of these small research companies, it's much less expensive to have somebody like Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer or somebody like that come in and either do a joint venture with that company, which means they're going to take their product and market it. So the product is developed by this small research company, and the marketing is done by a big marketing firm like Pfizer or somebody like that. So that dramatically, when that is announced, that makes the next big price move of that stock. VLDR, yes, that would be a kicker type signal. Now, yesterday's candle wasn't a huge down candle, but the fact that they opened positive and traded positive today gives you a much better prospect that it's going to start trading higher. It's not a pure kicker signal in the sense that usually like you see a fairly big candle and then another fairly big candle. In this case, yesterday's bearish candle wasn't all that big, but it still implies there's now a strong reversal. Okay, I'm sorry that we do not have the technology working for us tonight. Mike, on S or QS, it's not a scoop type pattern. It's more of a trend channel. So at least you have the prospect that it could come back up to the top of the trend channel somewhere around the $65 area. And then you see what happens at that level. I'm trying to think. All right. Congrats on your engagement. Is that for me? Oh, I'm more engaged. Okay, I see. No, you still put some weight in the kicker type signal. I mean, it's telling you a story. But what you'd really like to see is a pure kicker signal that has a lot more more relevance to it. All right, I had I guess it won't mean all that much. I was going to do this because it was going to be a good session for showing where the high profit. I'll keep this list, and we'll go through it again probably on Monday night. So Will is saying in most cases like QS, it gapped up and traded off today, but up still from yesterday, but a red candle. Would not get into the trade positive above today's open. Same as blank. Yeah, pretty much. However, this is what we would call a message in today's candle on quantum QS. And a message is that it opens up and then trades lower, does a dark candle. But the message was that they came into this with great enthusiasm today, and then there was some profit taking. So the visuals of candlesticks make this a very simple trade setup, meaning if we see a doji, a hammer, a harami, or bullish trading on Monday, what's that tell us about the dark candle today? The profit taking from today's open is over. Now the message, which was strong buying coming back into that trade, is back in place. That's when you can start buying. Volume on US the last 3 days verify the candlesticks. Boy, it doesn't really matter. Now today was a big volume day. What was 25 or 24.5 million shares. It's a pretty big trader most of the time, anyways. Yeah, it was right at the 50. So again, the reason a message works is relevant is because it is telling you people wanted to get back into the stock with great enthusiasm, and then there was profit taking. Now we want to see when the profit taking's over and that the resumption of that enthusiasm takes place, which is likely because that's the whole reason that it gapped up in the first place, was there was new bullish sentiment in this one. Seems like QS is trading sideways. It has been. That's the trading channel. But it hit the bottom of that trading channel 3-4 days ago, did a bullish signal, a bullish harami, which told you the selling had stopped. Then they started gapping it up. What's it tell you about your next target? Your next target is likely to be the top of that channel, which is in about the $65 range, which makes for still a decent price move going from this area 49.50 up to 65. That's still a good 30% upside just to get to the next resistance level. And for all we know, at that, well, not all we know, at that time, we just see what happens when it hits that level again. It almost hit the T-line today, yes. Close enough to say, yeah, it didn't go back down through that level. KKR, Mike is not Mike, Harry. KKR is what we call a trend kicker. You can see that it's occurring in the trend, not at a reversal point. What's happening here? There it is. Now, what makes that significant is the fact that you have a fry pan bottom type pattern, and now you've got a trend kicker at the breakout level, and we know what the results of a trend kicker signal is. It's going to be more upside. So you've got a fry pan bottom breakout with a trend kicker telling you there's more upside. That's a pretty good indication that kicker or that fry pan bottom is breaking out. Is there any way to determine if profits are being taken or if it's a sell-off? Yes, Mike. And that's the nature of the candles. That if you see a pullback with a bunch of dojis, that's telling you more than likely that's just profit taking, not very convincing selling. Yeah, Mike. So that's how you should be looking at QuantumScape is not only as a short-term trade setup, but also has the capability. And as you can see, anytime they announce something that gets them more positive toward their reaching the final goal of perfecting their solid core battery, people jump in. Not only people, but the institutions are holding this stock with the idea that not only will the battery be effective for the automobile industry, but if they can create a solid core battery with all the benefits that it has, it's going to be just huge ramifications for all the uses of that type of battery. So yes, we're looking at, let's say 5 days ago, no, there was on PSXP Phillips about 5 days ago. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, no kicker signal on there. Again, you have, but you do have on day 3 and 4 ago. There's your what you call your double doji. If you can pull up PSXP, this is a very high probability trade setup. Notice how in the uptrend, where you started an uptrend day 5 and day 6 ago, then you had a doji, and so there's a perfect example of who was asking the question of whether you can tell whether it's a pullback or a reversal. You can see how when it pulled back, it was not very decisive. And then yesterday, you had a big move. That told you exactly what was happening. They were in an uptrend, they consolidated, not sold off, just consolidated, and then when they opened up positive, they were heading higher. That's a double doji setup, yes. Now, if you take a look at the NASDAQ, oops, I'm on the wrong chart. No wonder I couldn't find anything. If you go to the NASDAQ, you'll see that on day 3 ago and day 4 ago, you had a double doji setup. Means when they started it up, they pulled back indecisive, and then yesterday they opened positive and traded positive. That whole setup tells you they took it up, they had some profit taking, and then they took it up again. That's telling you there was more upside. Now when you add the fact that they gapped it up again today, not only gapped it up, but gapped it up at the 50 and traded positive from there, that's a pretty good indication that the bulls are definitely in control. And Shell, yes, had that double doji, and in this case, the double doji after coming up through the T line, just came back to the T line and traded positive from there. Okay, that's about all we can do tonight on a without screens. I will put a plug back in for QuantumScape, and that's only because when we started doing our reverse engineering research, the magnitude of the results of a solid core battery that's being produced by QuantumScape. And again, it's not that we're listening to all these companies that saying or that have potential huge battery future prospects, because it's kind of like pie in the sky until somebody gets there, and a lot of them don't get there. But the fact that QuantumScape can keep proving to the investors like Volkswagen and Bill Gates and a couple other major companies, what their results are, and those people are putting in hundreds of millions of dollars to further their research. It's not like they're trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes. They've got a product that's heading in the right direction. And so I don't know why I got off on that kick, but I just think here is one product based upon seeing what the candlestick charts have told us over the last year. If you make your chart small enough, you can see this stock started off somewhere at 9 or 10, went as high as 130, and now we're at 49.50 with the sideways move ready to start back up. You might have some very good, if you've got places where you can put a longer term hold, this would be a stock that you'd put in there. So again, I don't usually recommend long-term trades because we can't ever tell what's happening. But from the history of this company, we know what that they're getting close, or at least closer than anybody else. Yeah, QuantumScape has not only a double bottom, but now a triple bottom. So with that, everybody have a good Easter or a good holiday. Have a safe weekend. We'll see everybody bright and early Monday morning. Sorry about the technical problems tonight. We'll see you Monday.